Hi, welcome to IGN. Today we have the developers of the new video game Bayou. I'd like to introduce Ryan. Nice to have you on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Nice to have you on the show. I'm your host, Stephen Schwan. Now, how would you say development's going overall so far?
I'd say it's going pretty well. We're in the final stages of production, so we should have the video game finished in the next couple months.
Yeah, we are trying to test the game right now and see how it works on a console. So it should be done in a couple months.
Excellent. Glad to see it come out. Tell us a little more about Bayou and your inspiration for making it into a video game. Like, what are the aspects of the game, and how did you incorporate the ideals of the book into the game? And what's your general plot focus?
And that's a good question, Stephen. Well, most games today only have the entertainment value. They don't really go in depth about the sensitive issues of the past. And we feel like Bayou is a one-of-a-kind novel, and it is easily adapted into a video game while keeping the moral aspects intact.
Yeah, the general plot focus would be Lee's journey and how she achieves a lot of things through her bravery, and the symbols that we try to incorporate would be the ones pertaining to racism and shapeshifting. Shapeshifting would be the more cooler aspect of the game, and the characters would gain powers as they progress throughout the game. And racism would be incorporated in the journey itself.
So one of our viewers' biggest questions is, what characters can we expect in the game, and how is the game actually played?
Well, we give the player the option to pick between the side of good and the side of evil. You could pick Lee on the side of good, or you could pick Staggerly on the side of evil. Regardless, in both cases, the player will encounter key characters from the novel, such as Brer Rabbit and Bayou.
So the game will be a role-playing game where the user will gain levels and obtain powers as you progress throughout the game. For example, Lee would get the power of persuasion and also gain the companionship of Bayou, while Staggerly would get the powers of shape-shifting. Speaking of which,
We actually have one of our veteran game testers in the studio right now, if you want to see him. All right.
That would be fantastic. Let's check this out.
This is our veteran game tester, hard at work. He's been playing for 57 hours.
Oppa Gangnam Style.
What?
Clearly the graphic novels incorporate such details such as racism. How have you integrated these concepts into the game in such a fashion that is both fun, but you've also made it a significant point?
Alright, so the symbols of racism in the novel are about the same as they are in the book. For example, the objective in the game as you play Lee is to save her father. But when you play as Staggerly on the bad side, you're trying to incriminate him and stop Lee from doing so. And when you play as Lee in the game, you encounter the same events as she does in the novel, and you feel the same way as she does. For example, when Lee loses Bayou at the end of novel 2, it's just like when you lose him as a companion in the end of the game. And then another symbol of racism in the game will be Billy Glass. He, when you speak to him in the game, he'll give you details about his death, and he'll explain how he died and how it was an unjustified murder. And then for the rest of the humans in the game, they will speak just as they would in the middle 1930s, like in southern states such as Mississippi and Louisiana.
I see. That's pretty straightforward. Can you further elaborate for me on how the characters reflect racism?
as Ryan mentioned, characters give the largest perspective of how they would in the Deep South. We have attempted to preserve the perceptions given by these folks. For example, when we go through the journey of Lee, we see her viewpoint of the injustice done to her father and to black people in general. But the cutscenes show gruesome caricatures of black people and then white people surrounding Billy Glass when he's being lynched with no emotion in their faces.
In addition to racism, shapeshifting plays an important role in the novel. How do you integrate shapeshifting into the game?
Alright, well, we plan on incorporating shape-shifting into the game by using some of the same characters as in the novel. For example, we're going to use characters such as Staggerly and the Boss Band in the gameplay as a type of opponent or boss for players playing as Lee. And like stated earlier, these characters will have the abilities to shapeshift to provide a type of opponent and challenge for players playing as Lee.
Rogov, how exactly will these characters get these shape-shifting powers?
Since it's an RPG, simply progressing through the game, completing various tasks and achievements will get you these powers. For example, if you go through the story of Staggered Lee, then you start off with as a human and you can like get flies to battle your opponents, and when you complete a few missions, then you get to call snakes, you get to call Jim Crows to fight off your enemies, and then as you come to the final ending of the game, you also get to shift into a panther to attack opponents like Bayou. And if you play as Lee, your charisma, bravery increase as you progress throughout the game, and you get new companions like Brer Rabbit and Bayou to help you fight your opponents.
The author Jeremy Love didn't include shape-shifting in Bayou for no reason. He had another purpose behind it. And what exactly was the purpose of shape-shifting, in your opinion?
Alright, so the symbolism behind the shape-shifting is mainly based on what the characters change into in the game. For example, Stagger Lee can change into a Black Panther, which can be seen as a symbol of racism in the time in Mississippi in the 1930s.
In my opinion, shapeshifting and racism are both interconnected in the novel Bayou, and that's what we try to incorporate in the game. So in addition to what Ryan said, another example that connects shapeshifting to racism would be that of Bossman when he changes into Jim Crows. So the Jim Crow laws were the laws that mandated racial segregation in public areas until 1965.
Also, every good game has a great soundtrack. What have you guys thought about in terms of the soundtrack?
Good question, Steven. The main part of the soundtrack will be a surprise, which the gamers have to wait for. But then, Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit is going to be playing in the background when there's like really intense racial content. And we're also going to play different renditions of the song Staggered Lee by famous artists such as Elvis Presley for giving the intro to Staggered Lee's character.
We've just heard the behind the scenes from the game developers of the new game Bayou. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks a lot. The game's going to come out 12/12/12. So buy it and then enjoy it.
Yeah, game lovers, keep your eyes out for this great new game. See you next week.